why don't you give us an overview? Seems like we actually had some releases of things. So maybe you can
Yeah,
just...
the beta for Shimmer has been released, so that's good. Not integrated with Wasp yet, because we're still working on that. There's a lot of effort being done on last minute things, last minute bugs, and quite a large effort is being done on documentation. So that needs to be finished first before we release, because otherwise we're going to be swamped in questions, which I expect anyway, but okay. So that's the thing. Yeah, I've tried to keep up a bit while I had COVID, but being a week out of the loop meant I did sit in on last week's meeting, but they could hardly hear me. I was so hoarse. So at the WASM end, we've been looking at a bug that was found by Yang Hao in the code for big integer division in the WASM lib. We have our own data types there, and so we also have a simple implementation of big integer, because otherwise you pull in a ridiculous amount of code from the standard libraries, and you also have to pray that they're all working the same way. So to prevent that, I implemented a very simple big integer package. All it does is add, subtract, multiply, divide, and modulo, and some shift left, some shift right. But that will cover most of the cases where you would need it anyway. It's mostly so we have a data type that can hold 128-bit integers, because that is the thing. Or 256-bit integers, I believe, even like you have at Ethereum.
Okay.
So that covers that part. That has been fixed. Yang Hao is currently looking at how to change the build system, because every time we have a change to the schema, we get a shitload of files that are being regenerated. And because they're regenerated, they're actually artifacts. So you don't want them in your source control system. So every time we have little changes, we have a large amount of files, and it makes it hard for people to look at those files and say, okay, this is correct or this isn't correct, because they have to wade through all the not essential files to find the code that you changed, right? So he's now trying to change the build system so we can remove all the generated files from Git, and Git will then run the schema tool, build the generated files, build the WASM files, and then run the tests using that. So that's a much better way of doing things, and it will reduce the amount of code in Git considerably. And he put out a first version for me to look at, so that's one thing I'm going to do today. The other thing I'm working on is the documentation, and that needs to be revamped quite a bit, because essentially we've decided that everything is now going around the schema tool. So all the documentation that we had that kind of bypasses that and has to go in depth in all kinds of things is essentially no longer necessary. So yeah, that means I need to restructure the flow of the document,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
and also a lot of rewriting. So that's
Oh,
quite a
it's a whole
job.
different approach, right? So,
Yeah. Where before you first explain about all the data types and whatnot, those data types are no longer essentially part of WASMlib. They're part of the schema tool, and WASMlib supports them. So a lot of code that was in the WASMlib originally in the previous version, in the GoShimmer version, has completely been deleted. We had all kinds of proxy data types that were used to access the variables and the containers that are stored in the state. But these are now generated on the fly when necessary by the schema tool. So they don't need to be documented at all, essentially. All you
hmm.
need to know is how to call a function, and that's it. And that's not big knowledge that you need. You don't need to know all the details of how the implementation does it under the hood. So that's now completely hidden from
Yeah,
the
that's really nice.
programmer. Yeah. And then there's the fact that we reuse the code now with different context for calling smart contract code from within smart contracts, calling smart contract code from solo in the debugging environment, and calling smart contract code from the client side. That all reusing the same code now. So that's also completely different. The client code was completely separate and completely separately generated, and that's completely gone now. I actually deleted from the repo as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, all those changes need documentation. So that's
That'll
I'll
keep
be
you
busy.
busy. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be busy the next few weeks. Like I said, part of the team is also working on the documentation. While they're doing that, they are, of course, encountering all kinds of stuff. So that means all kinds of little oversights or last minute changes. The command line utility, for example, was missing some functionality that is actually necessary if you want to properly use it. And while creating documentation that shows how to use it, they figured that out. So those things have been added. Let's see. There's still some discussions going on behind the scenes on how to do things, how to look at the system as a whole. But that is more geared towards the future of coordicide.
Okay.
There are a few viewpoints of people that have very strong opinions.
I noticed.
So that's going to be interesting discussions. To be honest, my money is on Ivaldas.
Okay.
He's got a really solid understanding of everything. So, and he's taking level 2 into account, right? And that's the important thing, is that we're building something that where level 1 and level 2 are integrated in such a way that they're kind of an unbreakable unit. And level 1 needs to be in service of level 2, essentially. Otherwise, what are we doing, right? It's the smart contracts that are the thing that allow everything to happen. So if you don't support that properly at level 1, then what are we doing? So and to do that, we need to get rid of a few shortcuts, I think, that we took, and just revisit a few decisions that were made.
Okay.
So let's hope
So-
we can keep it non-breaking. The design is much more solid now, so that should help. And otherwise, we're probably going to wrap it into the changes that are needed anyway if we are going to do coordicide. So Let's see. What else do we have? Oh yeah, I've been looking at the fact that TypeScript took 10 times longer to run than Rust and Go on the WASM side. And that turns out to be silly me. I didn't specify the optimize flag. Yeah. So once I start adding the optimize flag, it turns out that the code runs on par with Rust and Go. So
That's
hooray.
good news. Yay.
That's really good news, yeah. So choosing the assembly script version is going to be a good option as well. It's not going to impact your code in any shape or form, other than that you can use a language you already understand. So that might be a good thing for the assembly script version.
Sounds or
I
TypeScript,
believe,
right?
yeah, TypeScript. Assembly script is a subset of TypeScript
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's compiled and not interpreted.
Gotcha.
So they can't do everything, but it's close enough that you can use a lot of TypeScript. And to me, I only always use a subset anyway. I try to keep my code as simple as possible. So I never use esoteric functionality unless I cannot otherwise prevent it. But I'd rather program something straight than use constructs that you have to have a master's degree in that language for to be able to understand what's going on. I'm one of the guys that will still split up difficult expressions and put braces around sub-expressions. So even though I know the order evaluation, to make it clear in the code, right? To me, clear code is much more important than using the latest tricks in the book. So, and actually, okay, a fun side story. In the past, actually 1995, I was working at Philips at the digital compact cassette. And I found out last week that there are still digital compact cassette aficionados. I wrote a program called DCC Studio that allows you to edit digital compact cassettes. So you can, it's like a music editor and playlist editor. I wrote that shit in 1995, and it turns out these people are still using my software after 25 years.
That's crazy. That's awesome. Well, that's the way it goes. You know?
And there is a DCC museum, and I got in contact with that guy because I said, hey, yeah, they were asking questions about DCC Studio and such. I said, hey, listen, I wrote that shit, so I can look at my backups if you want. And sure enough, I found the code, and I'm going to donate it to the museum.
Oh, no,
But
that's very cool. I can't
I
believe
was
you even had the code. Wow.
yeah, I still have backups that run back all the way until the 80s. But anyway, that code, I was reading through it, and at that time I had already that mindset of clear code is everything. Reading that code, and that was code that did Windows 95 programming, among others, or printer drivers to because you would have a printer cable connecting to your DCC recorder to exchange the data, and it was actually readable beyond anything. I was like, holy crap! I can still understand this code. Well documented as well. Holy shit! So yeah, that's been my intake on software always, and
Very cool.
yeah, that's important. Then other people can jump in easily,
Right.
and they usually follow my guidelines, and then you get software that everybody understands, right? So,
That is great.
anyway, that was the sidetrack. Let's see. Oh yeah, Larry ran some tests to be able, so that we're able to calibrate the gas for the different languages, because of course the Ethereum VM needs to, yeah, the gas needs to be calibrated so that the Ethereum VM and the WASM VM implementations are using gas in a similar way,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of hard to do because, yeah, there's such different systems. I mean, Rust, Go, and TypeScript are so close to each other that the little differences there hardly make a difference. You're talking maximum 10% or so, and that's something you can discard. But yeah, for EVM, it's quite different. So he has been creating some test programs, some test scripts, both in EVM and in WASM, and then ran them all. And yeah, it was funny initially because he wrote a code that ran through a loop and incremented a variable and such, and he got huge differences in speed from WASM versions and EVM. Until I pointed out that he was probably looking at the fact that the optimizer was optimizing away the loop.
Uh-huh.
So I helped him set up the code so that it was non-optimizable, essentially. And then you're actually comparing apples to apples, right? So
Yeah.
that produced some interesting graphs, and we're still trying to figure out if and what kind of calibrations we can do between EVM and WASM VM. Like I said, within WASM VM, the languages are so close together that it doesn't make much sense. I think Julius is still working on the deterministic distributed key generator. We have a non-deterministic one that is quick and fast, and that can be used, for example, in solo or to quickly set up a cluster. But we want a deterministic one because that is much more solid and safe. So he's working out the final kinks in that. Several people are on holiday, so for example, don't expect any progress reports from Dave in the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. What I can remember.
Yeah. Well, you pretty good for somebody who had COVID. It's hard to think. So.
Well, that's the thing. There's part of the that last week that's foggy. So I'm like, what happened then? I don't really remember.
Yeah.
I did actually, while I had COVID, do some small stuff so that others didn't get blocked. Because yeah, I'm home. I'm behind my laptop anyway,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even though my mental capacities were severely diminished, more than usual, yeah, I did manage to put out some stuff so that the others could continue.
Okay. So it sounds like on the EVM side of things, a lot of those guys are on vacation.
No, Diego is not on vacation.
Oh, okay.
Diego is the main EVM handler. Um, I no, I don't know. I don't remember
Okay. That's fair
about
enough.
any EVM stuff. I think they were doing some testing with all kinds of tools to see whether and how they integrate, and they're also hard at work at native tokens on the Tangle from EVM. So
Okay.
that and in integrating it into IOTA, right? So that that you pay your gas in IOTA and things like that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, for everybody who hasn't heard, who joined us late, I mean, Eric has had COVID, so I think we should kind of let him rest and get back to doing what he can do as he's recovering. So maybe,
Well, I'm
yeah.
mostly recovered, so
Oh, okay.
but yeah, I have less to report.
Yeah. Maybe some questions. Anybody in the group have questions? If not, I mean, just pipe up. Otherwise, we'll just kind of wrap it up. Okay. Well, I hope everybody has a good day. Eric, I hope you feel better. And those of you in the world that are heat challenged right now, I hope you guys are all okay. And I think we'll just wrap it up. So, Kumar, thank you for assisting me as usual. And of course, Eric, always you're a hero. Appreciate it very much. And let's kind of just wrap it up. And you guys regain another half an hour or so on your day. So, thanks, everybody. And y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Yeah, get
Okay.
better, Eric.
Have a good one.
Bye bye.